Tuia mai rā tātou, I roto I tēnei pō, tēnā koutou, Jay Wilson here from Te Pai Pai Waho, connecting to you tonight on a number of platforms, and we are starting a new season of Kōrero, Season 8. And the kaupapa for this kōrero is identity. And I looked in my list and of stuff that I've done over the last few years, and I actually haven't had many sessions specifically focused in on identity. So, I decided, I'll cover identity. Nā reira, e me I kauatu ana ki a koutou, e tangi ana ki ngā mate, kei te pāpā Matthew, Karauria, e moe, e koe, Nairi Williams, e moe. Tatua te kia koe te tua ene wai maunga, e moe koutou katoa, I te māriretanga o te pō, o ki tonu mai ki a tātou ngā mauetanga I o me I nei e tangi nei kia ora katoa tātou. So, I've got that. I'll do an introduction on identity. And identity for us as Māori is massively connected to the land, to geographical features that connect us through whakapapa, through genealogy, to those geographical features. And I'd like to start with mana Atua, mana Whenua, and mana Tangata. And there are many other subsets, but as I know it, those are the three. And if you're going to add a fourth, then it's mana moana. So mana Atua, mana Tangata, mana Whenua, mana moana. The rest are all subsets. Sadly, today, the westernisation of Māori culture, we think mana Whenua are people or tribes, when actually that's just an evolution as a result of law. When actually mana Whenua rest with papatuanuku. And it's our relationships as tangata where we then connect to the mana Atua, that kāhui, that collective of Atua, the mana Whenua, and the mana moana. And as I think about identity today and what does identity mean, because identity will vary depending on who you are, your own situation, the trauma that you and or your family have been through, and the journey on the journey to reclaim identity. And the most common example of how to recognize identity today is that people will say they're pepeha, which is an evolution in itself, because pepeha, as they are used today, will say such and such is my mountain, such and such is my river or my waterway, might be your harbour, your ocean. And then you name a list of other geographical features, and then tribal identity, etc. Some will only say one or two of those different tribal identities. Some will say every single one that they can whakapapa to, and others will change depending on where they are and what the context is. And I'm the third grouping. I'm the one that will acknowledge, yes, I might be this and this, but if I'm at Rātana, then I'll add my Ngā Wairiki Ngāti Apa hat. If I'm in Taranaki, then I'll add my Ngā Rauru hat. If I'm in Taupo, then I'll add my Tūwharetoa hat. And if I'm in Taihape, then I'll add my Mokai Pātea hat, knowing that I've been born and bred in Whanganui. And that will come out when I speak in Te Reo, because I speak in the Whanganui language. So the pepeha, the proverbial sayings that we use, which connect us to geographical features, is an evolution. I'm not saying it's a new thing, but it's an evolution where at one stage it was the leader of your tribe that would say that, or the spokesperson of your tribe. And that's evolved. We now all say it. And even so, we now teach non-Māori to say it as well. And that's evolved, where we're now getting non-Māori to, instead of "this is my mountain," they say, "I have been raised in such and such." And so that will continue to evolve. But I think the most important thing is, where do we find our place in what is our place when so many of us have been disconnected from home? But in being disconnected from home, how do we connect, and how do we maintain active responsibilities back to that place that we whakapapa to? And so I thought, well, I'll just share a bit of my own journey and identity. So I'm number 9 of 9 children. So I'm the baby. And then I've got around about 9 other whāngai brothers and sisters. So I'm number 18 of 18. And my whāngai brothers and sisters are all my whanaunga. And we were brought up in a 3-bedroom Māori affairs house in Ohakune. So was raised at home. My mum and dad are both from that area. And so I was fortunate to be raised at home. However, we had no te reo Māori in our household. Te reo Māori was spoken around us. And whenever my grandmother was around, there would be phrases that she would use in front of us. But generally, te reo was spoken as a language of exclusion. And this Jack Nohi got nosy and wanted to know more. And so from about the age of 11, there are certain things that happened where I started to get nosy and started to teach myself. And then through secondary school, did te reo Māori classes and was taken under the wing of my elders, where they taught me tikanga, and through osmosis, I suppose, started to pick up the reo through that, as well as my language classes at college. Plus, exercise makes things perfect. So, speech competitions at the huiaranga and speech competitions, mana kore, or what they're called now, we called them koremako. All of those different things were part of my journey. But we didn't have the reo. My brother and sister, who were raised by our nana, they were both raised with te reo, and then when they moved home, lost it. Though when my sister has a few drinks, it still comes back. And it's a real horanui twang too. It's quite beautiful. But I could lament that, and I could also lament that we were referred to as the Pākehā of our family. Because we were raised in town, and mum and dad were involved in a lot of Pākehā things as well. And one would think that you lose out because you then are sent in another direction. But I like to think about the richness that I got out of the little that we did have. And I say that because Mum was very clear on us having to do certain things. And even though we had to use Catholic, or we used Catholic karakia to do those things, I realised once I got put under the wing of my aunties and uncles and nannies and koros, that actually that was a very Māori thing. And it just happened that we did it with a Catholic prayer. And so all of this is part of an identity where I navigate things, and went through an angry stage of being anti all of these colonial things, including the church. Whereas it is what it is, and I've chosen to do my own path, but I'm no longer angry with it. But this identity thing is a real thing, because it's easy for people to assume, based on their own trauma, that just because I might have the reo might have been taught a whole lot of things that I always had it, and that's not the case. And I think I just respect everybody on whatever their journey is. I will challenge people though if they want to put their trauma onto others, because we've got to find ways to grow and foster each other. And as we grow and foster each other, I'm really fortunate that I might not have had the reo, but mum and dad always gardened. And as they gardened, I've since realised if there's one thing in our culture that hasn't been broken, and for most of us, it's mahi kai. And as a result of academia, we've tended to put emphasis on the language learning and the songs and the incantations and all of that, which are important. But the one thing that we've never lost is mahi kai, is gardening, fishing, hunting, gathering food, all of those things, foraging. And actually, there's a heap of reo in that. And even more so, there's a heap of culture and practices that underpin values. Classic example, a deer or a pig, both introduced animals. And there's one thing that many hunters do, which they've just done because that's all they've known. And they cut the heart out and they put it up in a tree, especially for a deer. And I'm not saying all hunters do this, but there are many hunters that do it. And the reason why they do that is you're giving back to nature. And specifically with regard to animals, they're giving back to rū. And you place it on tāne so that tāne can offer that heart back to the universe as an act of ensuring that we maintain respect, a healthy respect. That's identity. You might just call it hunting, but that's you maintaining your identity. No different to having to do lines and lines of taiwa or kumara, kamo, whatever you want to call them, hue, all of those different things, that's all part of identity. And I did say about a year or two ago that we actually eat our pepeha. And what I meant by that is when you refer to the geographical features where you come from, food grows and is part of those geographical features. And as you and your tupunas ate it, it then becomes part of your DNA. And what it is it becomes part of your memory. And so this is all part of our identity. And there will be moments where you go to places and go, oh, this feels familiar, but I'm not from here. Be open, because you might be from there. And what I loved about it is I had that experience when I went to Scotland. You know, I'd been living in London on my OE, Missy and I. And, you know, it took me a year and a half before I got to Scotland and flew up on one of the cheap flights, Ryanair or EasyJet or whatever it was. And as soon as my foot touched the tarmac, my tupuna told me that I was there, that I was home. And always known that my great-grandfather was Scottish and knew his name and knew where he was from, but that was it. And I, taku waka pai, that's because ko kaingia e au i ngā kai o taua Whenua, ana ka ono te wairo o tērā Whenua ki roto i au i te tatunga o taku tapu ai ki runga ki tērā Whenua. I'm getting emotional, so I better speak back in English. And And so because my body stores memory, it stored a memory back to that place. No different to when I went to Bedfordshire to find my pestle hakapapa. But I'm sharing that because identity today is something that we're going to have to navigate. And all I ask is that we show some love. Oh, kia ora tuahine, piki te ora kia koe. Make sure you listen, eh? And show some love because everybody's journey on identity is different. And you might be recognized as an expert today, but for the rest of the people, don't assume that that person doesn't have their own trauma. Similarly, those who are being raised in the culture and not even speaking any English, also be mindful that we've got to take others on the journey. And some of them won't want to go on the journey, kei a rātou te rā. But those that are interested, how do we lift them up? How do we give them a hand up? Because I think we're still on a journey of growth, and I think my generation should be bridging that so that we get to the right place to ensure that not only are we sharing a bit more love, but we then foster identity and how identity evolves going forward. So over the next few weeks, I'm going to be sharing a bit of kōrero around identity. Please feel free to share your thoughts on on different kaupapa that you might want me to talk about. And then we'll go from there. So, yeah, I just wanted to share a bit about do an introduction to identity and remembering that mana atua, mana tangata, mana whenua, mana moana, that mana rests with those things. And we shouldn't take that away from those things because we get into a really funny place where we then use non-Māori ideas and start to usurp those ideas ourselves as Māori onto our whenua, onto our atua, onto our moana. Rather than remembering, as tangata, we are the taina of everything else, and we should remember our place. Ka te ake te iwi. Have a great night. Take care. Stay well. Keep warm, because it's a bit maka chilly. Nā reire me ana, kia koutou o te rā ki tātou, I roto I tēnei pō, rire au. Pai mārire.